It's August 3rd, 1990, and I'm going to show you where I lived when I was a little kid in Goleta. My first memories are right on this, what used to be a road here. There used to be a road going up here. And I was about maybe 4 years old. And I told Patty, who was about 2, that I knew there was a hobo living up the road up here, the highway. This was the only highway, Highway 101 then. There was a hobo living underneath the bridge, staying down there, and I wanted to show it to her. So it was instructions. I'm never supposed to go houses down there, and I walked up this road with her. And I remember coming up, these trees are all here, the road. And let me show you what up here at the bridge. So I brought my sister up here, Patty. You hear the traffic back there. That at that point was the only road. This is the way if you wanted to go from San Francisco to Los Angeles, you came down this road. Only a 2-lane road then. So we got up here, and I was showing her under the bridge. Down here, and then the bridge was a little smaller, and there wasn't a little bicycle trail down there, bicycle path. And we were looking down there, came back up. Actually, no hobo was there. Came back up, and our dog Blackie followed us up and was dead on the highway. Been hit by a car. I remember the next day. They buried Blackie down underneath a lemon tree, down below the house. That's my first memory of my life. I'm going to tell you about my second memory of my life. Involved this tree and a twig. Not much bigger than this. Not like this. Probably about that size. When I was about 4, our house was right there. Small, fairly small house. This was the ranch that my dad had. About 48 acres of lemons, 50 acres, 60 acres of lemons, almost down at the bottom, just before the Second World War. Over here was a big garage, farming garage for the farm equipment. And there was a Saturday morning, flatbed bed truck here parked. Frank and Dad were out here talking. And I was fiddling around, and I got this stick. Actually, I think the stick was more like that size, because I was, as I said, about 4. And I went underneath the back of the flatbed truck, back up against the garage. And there was a squirrel under there. I went up to the squirrel, and I was going like this to the squirrel, like this. Actually, very tiny stick. Yeah. And the squirrel bit me. Grabbed my whole thumb in his mouth and clomped down on it. Keep fighting. My thumb was ripped open. It was white. I still have a scar. You want to see the scar? I'm trying to figure out what thumb it was. It's this thumb. There's still a white mark there for the teeth. That squirrel got me. Okay, I want to come over here and show you my third memory. About the same age. Winter. It's been raining a long time. So much so that this creek is full of water right up to the brim. The creek has been widened now, so it wasn't this wide yet. It's full of water. Hurling down there with different debris coming down in it. We had a little mongrel dog named Punky. And I came down here and I got curious whether Punky could swim in that raging water. So I pushed Punky into the water. And she did swim. She swam across the other side. And I don't know, one of the parents had to walk up around and get her. That's my third one. Now I remember another one of those early memories. Over here was our house. I have a few memories of the house, the backyard. One of them hits me hard. I remember when my dad left for the war. And what I really remember was my mom crying afterwards. Sort of collapsed against the door, slid down. Just crying. My dad left. That must have been 42. Well, it must have gone off the train at 42, 43, 42. That was about 4.5 5. That was about 4.5. I'm going to tell you about two memories, I guess. I was planning to tell you all about one. That plane reminded me of another one. Shortly after my dad left, this plateau in here, they built a naval, it was a Marine pilot training airbase. So from then on, we heard the noises from the ranch, which was about 2 miles that way, all day and evenings. But hear them off and on. Pilots learn how to fly their planes. And one of the eeriest sounds was hearing them crash, which I heard a few times. And they tend to crash in the water. And I remember one in particular. I think my mother was very alarmed. You hear the thing whining. You knew from the sound that it was crashing. It crashed into the water. The other memory was, of course, the beach here, which we used to come to in the summers when I was a little kid, and then even many years later, back to the water, just growing up. But as a little tiny child, I remember lying on the beach, having these fantasies, what I would do if a tidal wave would suddenly appear out of the ocean, rushing toward me. For some reason, when I was about 4 or 5 or 6, I heard about tidal waves. I was terrified about it. I actually remember, see the waves over there, I remember about that age. I'm out in the water, twisted up by the water, thrown under current. Somehow they got mixed up in those tidal waves. The other memory of this area is swimming around in this area, right in where the ocean water goes right into the slough. And we used to play right in this sand, right over here. And we used to play right in this area, right here. Splash in this very shallow ocean water. And I believe the cave wasn't as far dug in over there, but we used to play up in there along the cliff there. All along here, the coast. We went to different places when I was a kid. Either driving on the top, looking down, going down and swimming, finding little places to make beaches, especially down here in Goleta, the Goleta Beach. This is the one that I used to go to when I was little. During the early war period, my grandfather, my mother's father, Papa, liked fishing. Bring me out to the Goleta wharf here. Let me fish out here with him. He'd catch something I usually didn't. This is the ranch that I grew up on the first 4 or 5 years. From about 1943, 44. My dad was off to war, North Africa, Italy. And then we left here and joined him in Texarkana, Texas, and Aberdeen, Maryland, and then here in San Francisco at the end of the war. All of this was lemons, big, beautiful lemon grove. I worked in later, 7th, 8th, 9th grade, 10th grade, they would come here for summer. My dad still owns all of this. Over that area is the medical center and community hospital. Land under which these my children. This hill right here, when we returned to Santa Barbara in 1946, we lived up this hill, and I used to ride my bike down it, zooming at crazy speeds, and then walking back up. So this is the house we lived in. We came back from San Francisco in 46. We didn't live here very long, maybe less than a year. Maybe only 4 or 5 months. One of the scenes I remember is, see this front porch, it didn't have this shrubs in front of it. I remember this terrible scene of my sister hanging from that porch with her fingers screaming. And I ran up there and got my mother to save her. She was hanging from that porch, which now looks like it's only about 4.5 feet, 5 feet off the ground. So then we moved from that house up there, came down here. This is about 3/4 of a mile away, Here's the stream. The home place was right over back there where my dad's father's house was and where my dad grew up. Right here is the house we moved to. That's the house we lived in for a number of years. This is the bridge, though the bridge has been widened now. Down here is the creek. Look down there, you'll see that there's a cement wall there. There's a drought now, so there's no water in the creek. There was water much of the year back then. The water would spill over there and be a little waterfall, and below it was always a little pond of water. We used to go down there and play along that water. Creek, the whole creek bed. Adventure. Let me show you something else. Across the bridge here, take a look at the stream over here. The big oak tree over here. On a branch over there, there's a rope hanging. And we used to swing from that rope out over the river, the creek bed. back and forth. It's one of the great joys of living here, was swinging over the stream back and forth over that bank out. Along here, in front of the house, was a hedge. A lot higher than I was. I remember playing in it a lot. One time, poking right in the corner of my eye, I got a twig caught in it. I had a patch over my eye. So back here, I'd forgotten this. It's a cistern. When they did the cementing, you can see there's my sister's name. We've got our handprints in there. Pretty small little handprints. Patty, Butch, that was me. Punky, my dad's dog. Duchess was my mother's dog. One Christmas, Louis brought my dad's brother. Came over after Christmas, talked about the gifts. Nicky, my cousin, Pelican. We came out here on the back of the pickup, playing blind man's buff. And put something on her head. Of course, I shot a hole in the window of the pickup. Get out of that, I fall. I was not going to be done. Now over here, you see the back of the house. Porch back there. Where GB, my dad's dad, my grandfather, used to eat his meals. He had a little stove back there. And I remember coming out, sitting with him when he made pork chops and wine. It was delicious. At that point, GB lived with us for a while. And back here was a barn back there. It's not there anymore. I remember building on the back of a little wooden house out of discarded crates and wood. My sister and I even built a fireplace on it. I remember convincing my sister that it was all right to start a fire in the fireplace. The fireplace itself was made out of a crate. And the fire broke out and our whole house was on fire. The barn itself was next to it and was going to catch on fire. And my sister wanted to run to my mother and tell her there's a fire on. I didn't want it because I thought we'd get in trouble, but she finally persuaded me and ran and got my mother. Ran back. Luckily, we put the fire out before the barn burned. Well then, after a couple years of living at that last house, my dad bought this house right down here, and we lived here through the end of the 40s and the 50s. See that little porch on the second floor. Where my sister's room was. First I lived downstairs, and then they built the extension on the top of the left-hand side, and that window up there was into my bedroom. Back then, there was a farm below there, a lemon grove, and the road that comes down there stopped, and there was a lawn and actually a little swimming pool over there down there to the left of the house. A little swimming pool. Back then, all the land around here was farmland. Nearest kids that I knew were about 4 miles that way. Be a real lonely farm life kind of experience here. I remember weekends when I was a little kid, maybe 6th grade, 7th grade. So the whole weekend almost felt like nothing happened. Maybe I had a job raking leaves or something. It gets so lonesome, my ears would ring. Then about 1950, 51, here on the mountain, My dad put a TV antenna and drank it down. You can still see a wire going down there. And we got Los Angeles television. And that really connected me up with the world. Back then we had our two dogs, which we had over the other place, Funky and Duchess. Duchess got really depressed. She was a Doberman pitcher. She got fat, depressed, and they'd lay cow shit or chicken shit down through the orchard here. The dogs would eat it, eat the garbage. And she'd come up through a path here, come out on this road, lie down in the middle of this road here, just cried, as if she wanted a car coming to her down. A couple years later, I got my dog, a boxer, Ricky. And Ricky used to come up here and chase cars. And sometimes he'd run right into the cars, leap on it, broke his leg, would just go charging a car and smashing it. I remember his leg was all broken, cast and everything else. He was a wild dog. In his old age, he'd come up here and follow horseback riders. Horse trail, and he'd follow horse trail. Black riders, and we get a call maybe 5 miles away saying, "We got a dog here. He's got a little chain that says it belongs to you. Come get him." And finally, when the family broke up, everybody left the house. The dog followed one of those people and got attached to one of them and moved in with him. Some years later, when I came back to Santa Barbara, I went to that neighbor's house, which was about 4 miles there. See my old dog, was sort of crippled then. Yeah, he remembered me, I think. He knew I was somebody. But I remember getting him when he was a little pup. Okay, he was my best buddy for a few years. Down there in the valley was Highway 101 and the railroad track. A couple times a day, the railroad train would come through these huge, long freighters, and 2 passenger trains a day. Sort of break up the day by the train runs. In the winter, the whole valley would be covered on cold nights. Wake up the next morning, be covered with smog from smudge pots. And all night you'd hear the wind machines coming. And the men yelling as they fill the smudge pots. We'd go down sometimes and watch them. They'd put smudge pots down on the lower end here. And they had 2 wind machines on this road. The smudge pots and the wind machines were there to try to keep the temperature up so the lemon trees didn't get frozen, or the fruit didn't get damaged. Remember one time, earthquake hit. House shook, we were up and upstairs, windows were shaking like this. The swimming pool, which was right down here, lost a foot of water. Made a little tidal wave right in that swimming pool. Splashed right out. Didn't crack it. And we had an old Russian couple live in the house down below. There's a little house there in a garage. It's not really there anymore. There's something built there instead. They got so scared they left. They moved out of California after that.
On.
So I lived here about 6 years. For the first few years we had to go a long way for school buses. So I'd walk 3/4 of a mile down that way, sometimes through the orchard down to the highway. When I was 16 I got a car and would drive to school down into Santa Barbara, the high school. Stayed here until I was 18 and then went off to college. And after that only lived here a little bit off and on in summers, a couple years. And then my parents moved out, sold the house,